Is it me, or are the Labour Party in Britain actually onto something here with setting up these military-style schools? It seems a shame, though. It seems a real shame to me that it's ended up being like that. I know that they're saying that there's not an agenda of a boot camp, or that it's nothing to do with discipline and this, that and the other, but at the end of the day, you know, for the suggestion to even have to occur that it would be a good idea to get the military involved in schooling, there must be some kind of breakdown in discipline in the education system. And you don't have to be a Philadelphia lawyer to work out that that's occurred. I did some teaching. I've got teaching qualification, and I've done a bit of teaching here and there over the last, well, how long is it now? I suppose 20 years. Can't dear, doesn't time fly, eh? But yeah, over the last 20 years, I've had my teaching qualification 20 years, and I've dipped in and out on the odd occasion. Not had any permanent position, but done some supply teaching here and there, and it's just got worse. It's just got worse, and it's the same. Well, not about the world over. There's painting a bit of a broad brush on it, but certainly my understanding in the United States and other developed democracies in the world where fortunately, I suppose, we're not oppressed by any kind of dictatorship, and there's free speech and so on. But with these freedoms, liberties have been stretched, and the kids of today, they're so savvy. That's the point, isn't it? They're so full of themselves. They seem to grow. In fact, this morning, it's quite funny, really. This morning, my missus was looking out the window, and she said, the neighbour's kids. I taught her, actually, funnily enough. It was only about 3 doors up the road from me, and I taught her at the local primary school. She's a lovely kid, don't get me wrong, she's a smashing kid, but my wife was looking out the window, and she said, I don't believe this. This girl, Jade her name is, she said, I'm not going to believe this. She's going to school in her school uniform, bearing in mind she's the last year of junior school, whether they're 10, 11 years of age. She said, with a proper woman's handbag under her arm, held, just like this, like a woman would hold her handbag. They grow up so fast, don't they, these days? And it's a shame, really, because it's a loss of childhood, really. And it was smashing. Like my wife said, she said, at that age, he was just bombing about on a bicycle and messing about in brooks and playing soldiers. She's a bit of a tomboy, my wife, but nonetheless, the point is, she was messing about and not interested in trying to emulate grown-ups. It wasn't that wasn't the thing, and unfortunately, of course, that's all very well and what have you, and it's quite funny, really, to laugh at their precociousness. But of course, the downside of all of that is that they also are terribly savvy on their rights. This is the business of they've got no respect for anyone, and there are positives. There are sides of the coin that say, well, you shouldn't be oppressed by adults, and children should have a voice, and they shouldn't be frightened to have opinions. And there's no place in this modern society for seen and not heard nonsense from the Victorian age. But then, of course, children are still learning their boundaries, and if you allow too much of that, of course, they take it too far. And you've got these situations, and legislation allows it to go that far. We're all too afraid to tell anybody off or remonstrate with anyone. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting we'll have to bring back corporal punishment or any of that stuff. I'm not suggesting that, but you can't even restrain a child these days. You have to have, this is just incredible to me, you have to have a specially nominated, and I know this because a relative of mine's husband, that's right, is one of these. In certain size schools and with certain problems, you have to have a nominated person who's presumably trained and signed off by, I don't know, the local authority, I guess, who is the physical restrainer, and so as they're kind of protected from being sued, that they are actually allowed to go in and hold on to somebody if they start knocking 7 bells out of their teacher, which when I got to that stage, it's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And it's such a shame, because everybody suffers. That's the problem. The education of the children that aren't like that suffers, and so inevitably, and I think it's quite a nice idea that Labour are bringing in they're saying that it's not to do with boot camp or discipline or any of that. It's just the ethos of the services, their general manner and attitude and discipline and service and helping each other, and all those kind of values are good to have in a school. Well, at the end of the day, I think there's a little bit also added that a great sergeant major, drill sergeant there at the front of the class. I think even some of the most unruly of kids will sharpen up as soon as he starts shouting and hollering at them, I have to say. But yes, it's a shame that the education system has ended up like that. And I've got another one that I heard the other day. You see, what we've got is it's generational. That's the problem, you see now, it's generational. You've got the new generation of children here whose parents went through school where discipline and boundaries between respect for adults and so on were being eroded. And so now you've got the children of those people at the school, and so the parents are on the side of the child. When I was at school, the reason I didn't give lip to the teachers, although I did, but I was careful about how far I took things, was not because I gave a monkeys about what the teachers were going to do. It was because I cared what my parents might do, or how my parents would react if the teachers phoned them up or wrote to them or whatever they did in those days. Probably carrier pigeon in my day, but that was the thing. Now you see the kids, the parents are on the kids' side. There was a chap the other day who was a teacher, who was a friend of mine, and he just so happened to touch this kid. I shouldn't bother with the details, but he just touched him accidentally, really. Although it was in a kind of verbal altercation at the time, and the kid thought nothing more of it, particularly. The next day, of course, the kid was in with the parent. Oh, this is assault and so on and so forth, because the kid went home and casually mentioned it to the parent, and the parent's thinking, that's a think over mind going on, a bit of compensation here for assault, they're on the old compensation trail. That's the other thing, this plumbing litigious society with a no win no fee. Not that I think no win no fee is necessarily bad in all respects, and the reason it was set up in the first place is a very good and just purpose behind it, so as justice is available to all and not just those who can afford it. And maybe we'll have a little rant about that at some other time. But it's taking it too far, these people think, I'll get a few quid here, it's a bit like these people who set up car accidents to get the compensation for whiplash, drive in front of people, where some innocent person minding their own business, someone comes along, drives in front and slams their brakes on. Person goes up their backside and they claim whiplash. Dangerous way of going about getting a few grand, I have to say, but there you are, people do it, they do that kind of thing. So I don't know, who knows where it'll all end, but we mustn't grumble, eh? Ta-ra!